like right now compared to our very recent history of previous Fed chairmen. The idea of Republicans helping to pass a bill to create jobs in this country right now is a little bit like trying to plan the particulars of your round-the-world trip with somebody who believes the world is flat. But that is what President Obama is up against right now as he tries to push Congress to pass his jobs plan. And you can hear it in his speeches that he's not only making the case for taking an around-the-world trip, he is also having to make the case at the same time that the world is round, because apparently we are not all on board with that.
Ohio, if you pass this bill, then right here in this state, tens of thousands of construction workers will have a job again. This is one of the most common sense ideas out there. All over the country, there are roads and bridges and schools, just like Fort Hays, in need of repair. There is work to be done. There are workers ready to do it. So let's tell Congress, pass this bill right away.
This is just one stop in Ohio today of many on the president's nationwide trip to promote his jobs legislation. Mr. Obama will be in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina tomorrow. Today's news from the Census Bureau, however, brought an even further sense of urgency to this issue. You may have seen this today, the news that the U.S. poverty rate is now the highest it has been since the early 90s. Nearly 1 in 6 Americans now living in poverty, and the specifics are even worse. Child poverty rose from just under 21% to 22%. Poverty among Hispanic Americans went from more than 25% to more than 26%. Poverty among African Americans went from just under 26% to over 27%. Poverty among white people is much lower than those other groups, but it is rising too, and fast. It went up from 9.4% to 9.9%. The only large segment of the American population that serves as any sort of silver lining in these poverty numbers is older Americans. Poverty among Americans 65 and over is statistically unchanged, even as it is getting so much worse for so many other groups of people. And that, of course, is because we have something in this country that keeps older Americans out of poverty. It's called Social Security. And the fact that Social Security works, that it is keeping old people out of poverty in America even as everybody else is slipping into it. The fact that it works means that in Republicanland, the front runner for the Republican presidential nomination is someone who says that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme and a failure. Is there any hope of a treaty between Normalsville and Republicanland? Is there any hope of doing anything constructive for the country that has to involve Republicans when this is the way Republicans talk to one another right now? Joining us now is Democratic Congressman John Yarmuth, who represents Kentucky's 3rd District. This is the district where the Sherman-Minton Bridge was suddenly closed down on Friday because of a crack in a load-bearing part of the bridge. It's diverted 80,000 vehicles per day in southern Indiana and Kentucky. With a full diagnosis of the problem still weeks away and fixing the problem months away, the Sherman-Minton Bridge is looking like the Louisville region's version of Carmageddon, one that looks, at least for the time being, to be an indefinite challenge. Congressman Yarmuth, thanks very much for joining us tonight. I appreciate your time, sir.
Great to be with you, Rachel.
Give me the update, first of all, on how people are coping in your district with this big infrastructure challenge that really arose out of nowhere. That decision to close that bridge on Friday happened fast and without warning.
It did, and it's, I guess, as close as you could have to a disaster. Certainly every bit as much a disaster as the flooding in New England that we saw the last couple of weeks. A couple 100,000 people at least are inconvenienced by this. We've seen commutes go from 15 minutes to 2 hours. Commerce has been disrupted throughout the region. We have the intersection of 3 different interstates in my community. I-64, which goes from Norfolk to St. Louis, and this bridge is part of the I-64 the artery. We have I-65 and I-71. They all come together there. So we have an incredible amount of commerce that goes through our community, and this has basically provided gridlock for us now. And again, as you mentioned, with no near-term resolution of it.
Congressman Yarmouth, President Obama is traveling the country talking about the need to pass his overall jobs package. And his jobs package includes a lot of different things. But the thing that he is really in particular talking about and talking up on the campaign trail is the need to fix roads and bridges and fix up public schools and do infrastructure work. How do you see your situation with this crisis in the Sherman-Minton Bridge and in your district? How do you see that fitting into this larger discussion about how to deal with the unemployment crisis in this country?
You know, this is, you almost wish that this had happened a day earlier because the president would have mentioned this situation. This is taking what sounds like abstract theory, I guess to some, to reality. This is not just infrastructure. These are real people trying to move and real commerce trying to flow through a region, and it's not happening. So what we're seeing here is an example of where money spent by the federal government could provide jobs, would keep commerce flowing, would save millions and millions of dollars. Businesses are losing in productivity, gas being burned, all of the things that, you think about in theory, but this is reality now. It's hit us, just as it hit Minneapolis a few years ago. And these are dollars that are, if you can talk about jobs without talking about infrastructure, then you really don't know what you're talking about. Unless we have highways and bridges and airports that allow commerce to move in this country, we don't have an economy. So these are jobs that can put many, many millions of people to work, that can provide work that prevents the type of incident that we're experiencing now in our community, and also can give businesses the confidence that we're creating an infrastructure that will allow them to do their business. And right now, we've got thousands and thousands of these situations just waiting to happen.
Congressman, I tend to think that our debates tend to be the most polarized and sometimes the most partisan when they are the most abstract. But as you're saying, this is not an abstract problem. This is a quite literally concrete problem. Does that mean that you feel like you're getting support, that you're on the same page with this problem and dealing with trying to fix this problem with the Republican senators who represent Kentucky, Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul?
Well, Mitch McConnell has said that the president's plan was basically a political agenda. And what he needs to do is he needs to come back to the district. He needs to stand there and talk to the people who are waiting in line and saying, we don't really need to be investing in infrastructure. We can't afford it right now. And ask them to make the sacrifice. He's not willing to do that. And again, to portray what the president has said as just another political act defies reality. He's staring in the face of something that is of enormous consequence to hundreds of thousands of his constituents. And Richard Lugar on the other side of the Ohio River is facing the same thing with his constituents. This is no time for partisanship, clearly. This doesn't affect just Democrats or Republicans. This affects everybody. And Mitch needs to take a leadership role in the Senate to help get this kind of investment adopted by the Congress. If he doesn't step forward, I don't know how we can get it done. But he needs to. These are his people.
Congressman John Yarmouth, Democrat representing Kentucky's 3rd Congressional District. Best of luck to you, sir, and all the frustrated commuters in your district. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel.
And Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, I'll just tell you, sir, if you would like to respond to anything that Congressman Yarmouth or I said tonight, I would love to have you. Honestly, it would be so much fun. Please be great.